Before Wano, Roronoa Zoro was already one of the most feared swordsmen in the world. He had survived impossible battles, defeated powerful enemies, and trained himself to endure pain that would break ordinary men. But Wano changed something deeper. For the first time, Zoro wasn't simply fighting to become stronger. He was beginning to understand what his swords actually meant. Wano didn't just give Zoro a new weapon, it forced him to confront his past, his ambition, and the kind of swordsman he wanted to become. This is how Wano changed Roronoa Zoro forever. Wano was different from anywhere Zoro had been before. It was a country built around samurai. Swords were everywhere. Honor mattered, and legends were carved into the history of the land. For Zoro, it almost felt like stepping into a world made for him. But there was something even more important waiting there: a sword. Enma, and Zoro had no idea how much it would change him. Enma wasn't an ordinary sword. It had once belonged to Kozuki Oden, one of the greatest samurai Wano had ever produced. And Enma had a terrifying ability. It drew out enormous amounts of haki from its wielder. For most swordsmen, that would be disastrous, but Zoro didn't run from it. He accepted the challenge, because Zoro had always understood something simple. If you want to reach the top, you have to survive what stands between you and it. At first, Enma nearly overwhelmed him. The sword pulled power directly from Zoro's body. His haki began pouring into the blade. But instead of abandoning it, Zoro forced himself to control it. And this was important, because Zoro wasn't simply gaining a stronger sword. He was learning how to control a power that could easily consume him. Enma demanded more from him, and Zoro answered by becoming more. Wano also connected Zoro to one of the greatest swordsmen in its history, Shimotsuki Ryuma. Ryuma was known as the legendary samurai who defended Wano. His reputation was so enormous that he became almost mythical, and Zoro had already been connected to his legacy through Shusui. But Wano made that connection impossible to ignore. Zoro wasn't simply another wandering swordsman. His journey was now intersecting with the history of Wano itself. But Zoro eventually had to give up Shusui. The sword was considered a national treasure of Wano. Instead, he received Enma. At first, this might have seemed like a simple weapon upgrade, but symbolically, it was much more than that. Shusui represented the legacy of Ryuma. Enma represented the legacy of Oden, and Zoro was now carrying a sword connected to one of the greatest figures in Wano's history. He wasn't replacing his dream, he was stepping deeper into it. Then came the battle that proved how much Zoro had changed. King wasn't just another powerful opponent, he was one of Kaido's strongest warriors, a Lunarian, a monster capable of surviving attacks that would destroy most fighters. And Zoro struggled. He was pushed to his limit, but during the fight, Zoro finally began to understand what was happening with his haki. He wasn't simply using armament haki, he was awakening something far greater: Conqueror's Haki. Zoro had never called himself a king, he simply wanted to become the world's greatest swordsman, but Wano revealed something hidden inside him. Zoro possessed the qualities of a conqueror. His will wasn't ordinary, his ambition wasn't ordinary, and his haki proved it. When Zoro unleashed Conqueror's Haki through his swords, he entered another level entirely. This wasn't the same swordsman who had entered the Grand Line. This was someone approaching the territory of legends. But Wano also taught Zoro something beyond strength. He learned that becoming the world's greatest swordsman wasn't just about cutting harder. It was about mastering himself, his pain, his fear, his ambition, his haki, and his relationship with his swords. Every sword carries a history, every battle leaves a mark, and every victory brings Zoro closer to the promise he made long ago, a promise to kunai. By the end of Wano, Zoro had become something different. He had mastered Enma, unlocked advanced applications of Conqueror's Haki, defeated King, and proven that he belonged among the strongest fighters of the new generation. But perhaps the biggest change wasn't his strength, it was his understanding. Zoro finally had a clearer connection between his past, his swords, and his future. He wasn't simply chasing power, he was carrying the dreams of the people who came before him. Wano didn't create Zoro. The boy who wanted to become the world's greatest swordsman existed long before he reached the samurai country. But Wano revealed what that dream truly demanded. It gave him Enma, it tested his haki, it connected him to the legacy of Wano's greatest swordsman, and it pushed him closer to becoming the man he promised Kunai he would become. Zoro entered Wano as a powerful swordsman. He left as something more, a man carrying the will of others, a warrior capable of Conqueror's Haki, and a swordsman who was finally beginning to look like someone worthy of the title he has chased his entire life, the world's greatest swordsman.